Shelley Read's international best-selling debut novel, Go as a River, is being translated into 34 languages and appears on multiple bestseller lists worldwide. A Sunday Times and American Booksellers Association bestseller, Go as a River is the winner of the 2024 Reading the West Book Award for Best Debut Novel, as well as being a High Plains Book Award Best Fiction finalist, a 2023 Amazon Editor's Pick Best Debut, a Goodreads Choice Award finalist, and a Colorado Public Radio's Best Book of the Year, among other national and international accolades. The book is also being optioned for a film right now. Shelley was an award-winning senior lecturer at Western Colorado University for nearly 3 decades, where she taught writing, literature, environmental studies, and honors. She holds degrees in the writing and literary studies from the University of Denver and Temple University's graduate program in creative writing, and was a Dean's Fellow in the University of Denver's PhD program in English. She's a regular contributor to Crested Butte Magazine and the Gunnison Valley Journal. Shelley is a 5th-generation Coloradan who grew up right here in Colorado Springs with 4 of those generations, and she now lives with her family in Crested Butte. Everybody, please welcome Shelley.
Thank you, Heidi. Hi, everybody. I can tell already you're going to be a fun audience. I was like, yes, because when anyone says that about the film, I also go, whoa. I am not joking about that. Hi, I am so honored to be here. Look around at all you beautiful people, you beautiful book people. Book people are wonderful people, and I just love to be surrounded by them. And here you are. I'm so honored, blown away, grateful to be here, right here in my hometown where I grew up, with so much response that they had to add a second session of this talk today, and it's just been an amazing day and an amazing experience. So I cannot thank you all enough for being here. I do want to start with a few thank yous, actually. Try not to cause any problems. Heidi, lovely Heidi, who introduced me, thank you for the introduction, and thank you so much for doing all of this and bringing me here, and the whole All Pikes Peak Reads committee and all the librarians at your magnificent Pikes Peak Library District. 15 libraries in this district, please. Yes, my goodness. Oh, and libraries are the heart of the community, you know, and I think that they're maybe more important now than ever, and we need to support them, and we need to champion librarians and empower them to do their work for their communities. I am so grateful for the Pikes Peak Library District. It was my library as a kid, and I have loved and honored it forever, so I am extra honored to be here today. So thank you, PPLD. Really great, amazing. My other heartfelt love goes to these 2 gentlemen over here, Tom and Jeffrey from Poor Richard's Bookshop downtown. The icon, I know, say that again, woo! Yeah, Poor Richard's Bookshop. Poor Richard's opened when I was 9 years old, and it has been my favorite bookshop ever since. I spent countless hours there as a kid and as a young woman, as a college student, whatever, browsing their bookshelves, finding the used books, the books that have formed my life. And then these 2 gentlemen and everyone at Poor Richard's could not have been more supportive of Go as a River from the very beginning. So I am so grateful to both of you and to Poor Richard's. So please give them a round of applause. You guys are amazing. And I'm also so grateful for anybody who supports your local independent bookshops. It's so important to any community, but especially Poor Richard's. I'm just, the other thing I wanted to say thank you to and acknowledge is I hear there's a lot of book clubs here today. Is that true? Yay, book clubs. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am so deeply grateful for the book clubs who have read my book. You have been very responsible for keeping this book alive. It came out 1.5 years ago, and it is still going strong. And I give book clubs a huge credit for that. Word of mouth, people reading the book, loving the book, recommending it to a friend, deciding to use it for your book club. You're one of the main reasons this book is still going strong after all this time. And also just what a delight to think of any book club gathering together, talking about books, okay, drinking a little wine or whatever, but having a few apps, very important. But I love book clubs, just the thought of people gathering around talking about books, but especially the thought of people gathering around talking about my book. So if you're here with a book club today or you've read it for your book club, I thank you. I really do, from the bottom of my heart. Independent bookshops, book clubs, librarians, you have kept this book alive and well all this time, and I just honestly could not thank you more. Oh, is that better? Oh, yay! Okay. Anyway, I could not be more grateful. So thank you, all of you. I'm going to talk first for a little while, and then, like Heidi said, I'll answer questions from the audience, which is actually always my favorite part of doing any kind of a book talk, because I'm mostly interested in what you want to know about the book and about my book journey. But I am going to start by talking to you a little bit about the journey that I've gone through to be a writer in my life. And so I'm going to start like this. I am 58 years old, and this is my debut novel. Woo! I want to start there because I am very proud of that. And when I look back on this very long journey that it's taken me to become the writer that I always knew I could be, I am very proud about the fact that I never gave up on this book, even though I wrote it, as I will explain, kind of against the odds in a lot of ways. But I also start there to encourage every single one of you to always remember it is never too late to follow your dreams, to accomplish your dreams, especially those of you who are creatives in any way. You love to write poetry, you love to paint a picture or a song or make music or whatever it is that you love to do that you've been kind of loved your whole life, whatever it is, and life has sort of gotten in the way, or you've been a little too busy, or that love of that particular thing got bumped to the bottom of your list, like it was true for me with writing. Just please understand, let me be living proof to you that it is never too late to follow your dreams. And the fact that I started out to be a writer as a little kid, and I'm only publishing my debut novel at my age, actually, I feel like the journey was just perfect. The timing was just perfect. Everything has its season, right? And our lives, if we are lucky, have many seasons. For many years, as I'll explain, it was my season to be a mom and a teacher and to, manage the complexities of life. And now I'm stepping in at my age to this new season of my life where I finally get to be a writer, and I'm so grateful for it. I can barely stand it. And also, that's why I'm so grateful for all of you. This book that has been a dream of mine my whole life, the fact that you're reading it and loving it, I cannot begin to tell you how much that means to me. So please, all of you, follow your dreams. It is absolutely never too late. So as I said, I started off to be a writer when I was a little kid. I was just that kid who always saw the world in a very narrative way. I was always wondering, what's the story there? I'd see somebody doing something. I'd be like, what's that guy's name? Where's he from? What's the story? Or I made up endless stories about little forest creatures and them having, cocktail parties. No, not cocktail parties. I was just a child, but birthday parties or whatever it was. And I just always wondered about people's stories. And so I wrote endless poems and short stories that my mom, bless her, saved a lot of those. And recently brought those, as my book became more popular and stuff, we've been sort of reminiscing about that childhood being a kind of a natural writer, that I was just sort of drawn to story. So we brought that book down from the attic, and we, about a year ago, we were going through it, and all my stories are in there. And how incredible for a 58-year-old Shelley to get to look into the mind of 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old Shelley who always wanted to tell stories. And in that box, I sort of famously in my family, I wrote a 66-page book when I was 9 years old. It is a master work of literature called Peter the Porcupine. Yes, indeed, it is. Few things about Peter the Porcupine. I was so grateful that my mom saved it, first of all. When I pulled it out of that box, it was in the envelope that I had put it in when I was a little kid. And on that envelope, in my little 9-year-old handwriting, I had given myself a copyright. And also in that, though, was the assignment from my 3rd grade teacher. And the assignment was I was supposed to write a 2-page short story. So, you know, I grew up with 2 brothers. So imagine the teasing I took for being such a geek, right? But proudly so. And gosh, so I wrote that when I was 9 years old. Who was that little kid who would take a 2-page assignment and write a 66-page book? And it was all about the wilderness. It was about where, you know, the wild landscapes and the forests that I loved to go camping in. And I had this whole cast of animals that were helping each other through difficult times. And then those of you who have read Go as a River, you know I'm basically still writing about the same thing. I'm still writing about the wilderness and how much I love nature and how much I learn from it and how, you know, we all have our struggles and our difficulties and how are we going to be able to move forward. So I went on to the University of Denver. I chose that specifically for their amazing literary studies and creative writing program. While I was at DU, I was the editor of the literary magazine and the president of the literary organization. I was one of the editors for the school newspaper. I was writing for the Denver Post when I was 20 years old. I picked up a 2nd major in journalism. I was well on my way to being a writer as a career. I went on to graduate school in a fabulous MFA program at Temple University's graduate program in creative writing. And that was absolutely what I was going to do with my life. And my first year at Temple, I was 22 years old, I was awarded a teaching fellowship. Thank goodness to help me pay for school. But also thank goodness because I fell head over heels in love with teaching. And especially at that age, and then oftentimes throughout my career, I was working with some of the most at-risk students who really, really needed somebody to see them clearly and cheer them on and encourage in a young person, you know, their best self and their ability to find their own personal genius. And there was something so meaningful to me about that I ended up being a teacher for 30 years. And some of you understand how fast 30 years goes by. But I loved it in those seasons of our life. That season, I taught for almost 30 years, a little over 29 years. 27 of those was at Western State College, which is now Western Colorado University in Gunnison. And I absolutely loved it. I loved my students there. Along the way, I became a mother to my 2 fabulous, amazing, beautiful children. My daughter Avery is sitting right over there. Hey, Aves! Yay. And it was absolutely my season to pour my heart and soul and everything I had into being the best teacher I could be for those students who needed me and the best mom I could be. And as many of you can understand, you're also juggling all the other things that life brings you. We had some tragedy in our family, a tragic loss. I had a terrible illness. There's always some challenge, always something going on. And you're trying to keep your family alive and moving and everybody going. You're showing up to work every day. And the fact is, there's only so many hours in the day. And as many of you can understand, my little passion project inside of me, my writing, got bumped further and further and further down the list. And pretty soon I wasn't writing at all. And, that's okay because, like I said, it was a very, very meaningful part of my life, and I don't regret any of it. But I will say that writer inside of me that I was born with and that always wanted to come out, it couldn't be silenced. And somewhere along the way in that journey, the lovely Victoria Nash, the main character of my novel, for those of you who have not yet read it, showed up in my imagination. And I have to say that where anybody who's a creative, anybody who likes to write or create in any way, where does that creative impulse come from? I don't know. It's magical and it's mysterious. And from whatever mysterious place that comes from came the character of Victoria Nash. And I fell so head over heels in love with this young woman and this character that I absolutely had to tell her story. So I owe Victoria everything. I love her. You cannot convince me that she is a fictional character and she's not like part of my family. Victoria is who turned me back toward my writing life, and I will never, ever, ever be able to explain to you how grateful I am for that. And the whole thing about Victoria is merely that once I started imagining her, I just fell in love with her so much, and I thought telling her story as I started imagining it and understanding what it was about her that I wanted to write, I just felt that it was a very important story to tell. And even when I absolutely did not have time for her, she just kept poking at me, like, tell my story. And so I did. I will tell you that I chipped away at this book little by little by little in the tiny little margins of my life whenever time would allow. I wrote this book for about 13 years. Yeah, I know, wow. I agree. Because the thing I'm honestly most proud of is that I didn't give up on it. And the reason I didn't give up on it is because I couldn't give up on her. And those of you who have read the book know that Victoria never gives up. And that's why I love her so much. That's why I love her so much. So I'll tell you exactly where this novel began for me. And I am so grateful that I remember this moment so precisely and so clearly, because honestly, the rest of those 13 years is a bit of a blur. I actually don't really know how I finished this book and got it out in the world. But I do recall exactly where it was born. And I love to tell the story. Those of you who have read the book, you will recognize this because it actually ended up in the book almost exactly as I experienced it. Those of you who have not read the book, fear not, no spoilers today, because I know some of you are only halfway through it or you haven't read it yet. So I won't give any spoilers. But those of you who have read it, you'll recognize this. So one night, I was out camping by myself in the Upper East River Valley. So as Heidi mentioned, I live in Crested Butte. I've lived in the Gunnison Valley. I grew up here in Colorado Springs, but I've lived in the Gunnison Valley my entire adult life, and that is truly and deeply my homeland. I was lucky enough to have family there before I was born, so I spent a lot of my childhood in Crested Butte. I spent a lot of my childhood swimming in the waters of Blue Mesa Reservoir, knowing that there were towns down there, which I'll talk about. But Crested Butte and the Gunnison Valley area, which maybe some of you have visited, you know how stunningly beautiful it is. It is deep in my heart, deep in my soul. Being a fifth-generation Coloradan, this land is just deep in my soul. And I love it with my whole heart. And that is where the novel is set. So a lot of the writing of that book actually took place in the exact setting, exact places where I'm writing. I am a wilderness woman. I spend as much time out in the wilderness as I possibly can. I'm a big mountain climber and camper and all the things, everything you can imagine that someone who lives at 9,000 feet elevation in up in the high wilderness of the Crested Butte area. These are all the things that I love. So I was known in my family for occasionally saying to my kids and my husband, hey, you know what, guys? Mom is suffering from excessive domesticity, and I'm going camping. So I grab my tent and go up the Upper East River Valley, and go camping by myself. It is still one of my greatest joys ever to go camping by myself. One night, it's just the place that I feel most connected to my true self and where things make sense to me. It's sometimes the only place that life and existence makes sense to me. One night I was up there, and it was an evening, kind of just at dusk, and I was sitting in this meadow, and pretty soon this beautiful doe, this lovely, lovely deer, comes shuffling through the foliage. Those of you who have read the book, you're like, I know where she's going with this. Pretty soon, one little fawn, shuffle, 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 comes out of the bushes right behind the mother doe. And as some of you know from reading, this ends up in the book at around page 100, 120, something like that. And it's almost exactly as I experienced it. Pretty soon, shuffle, shuffle, comes out of the bushes a second fawn who was far more fragile and thin and weaker than the first. And I have to tell you that my whole mama heart looked at that mother doe, just connected with those big brown eyes, mother to mother. And I felt such connection, I guess would be the word. You know, I had 2 children, she had 2 children. She and I both were just hardwired to do everything we possibly could to love those babies and keep them alive. And yet, I could tell that one of those fawns was far too weak. There was no way that that second fawn was going to be able to make it through the winter. And I found that so powerfully heartbreaking. And you know, it is not at all unusual to see wild animals of all sorts in the Gunnison Valley when I'm out camping on my own. I see deer all the time. There was just something really profoundly moving about that moment and that very fragile deer, knowing that that mother was not going to be able to save that baby. So that was such a powerful moment for me. The deer moved on, and I ran and grabbed my journal, which I always have with me when I'm out backpacking or hiking or camping, and I wrote it all down. I wrote it all down. That's why it ended up in the novel almost exactly as I experienced it. But I assure you, I had absolutely no idea why I was writing it all down. I just wrote it all down because it was very special and meaningful. The next day, I just kind of threw on my backpack, and I was climbing a mountain, and I was thinking about it, and thinking about the deep vulnerability of that, of like, why did it matter so much to me? And I was thinking about the vulnerability of motherhood, the vulnerability of loving anything that much, right? And in a lot of ways, the vulnerability of being a woman in the world, and what does it mean to be a woman in the world? And suddenly I was thinking about that scene, and I was seeing it through the lens of someone who was not me. And I recognized it right away as a character because I've been writing my whole life. And I was like, who are you? And it turned out to be Victoria Nash. And right away I knew, I didn't know it was going to be a novel. I actually didn't know it was going to be a novel for years. I just knew that there was a character who was forming in my mind who had this deep vulnerability of loving so much, who had a deep connection to place and homeland, who had a story that I wanted to tell. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know where I was going with it. I'm sure I just wrote a few things about it and tucked it away and didn't look at it for a while longer. But that's exactly when this novel was born. And I'm so grateful for that moment, and I'm really, really grateful that I remember it. And that's why I honored that moment by making sure that that scene ended up in the book itself. So over those 13 years, I just chipped away at it little by little by little by little. For those of you who have not read it, I wanted to set the novel in the Gunnison Valley, and I had always known about the story of Iola. So Iola, Colorado is a real town, or it was a real town, on the western slope of Colorado, just outside Gunnison, sort of between Gunnison and Montrose. It used to be a long stretch of some of the best fishing waters of the Gunnison River went through that area. Maybe some of you remember that. Until part of the Colorado River Compact the plan was to create Blue Mesa Reservoir, which is the largest reservoir in Colorado. For many people, Blue Mesa Reservoir is just a beautiful lake. It runs 24 miles down the valley between Gunnison and Montrose, and it is just a beautiful lake. But what I always knew as a kid swimming in that lake was that there are 3 towns at the bottom of that lake: Iola, Saponero, and Cebolla. So as the plans developed to dam the wild Gunnison River, those 3 towns were evacuated. A lot of the structures were either moved or burned, and those communities were flooded in order to create Blue Mesa Reservoir. I always found that so deeply haunting. And I think it comes a lot from my Colorado heritage of someone who has such a deep sense of homeland and has such a strong sense of place. I thought, what is the story there? What was it like for those people? That forced displacement had to be very painful for those farmers and ranchers who had ranched that valley for generations. And then, of course, when I started thinking about that, I thought, well, then there are layers of displacement beneath Blue Mesa Reservoir, because well before the predominantly white farmers and ranchers were displaced to create Blue Mesa, was the violent and tragic displacement of the Ute people, the indigenous people of the western slope of Colorado. So when many people see just a beautiful lake, for me, I saw layers and layers of displacement. And that is where I chose to set Victoria Nash's story, because I also wanted her to grapple with these themes of place and displacement, of home and family, and where we turn when those most essential things are lost to us. I wanted to explore issues around belonging and the idea of an outcast, or the idea of prejudice in a community, and where does that come from and how is that inherited. There were layers of things that I wanted to include in this novel. And so I think that part of why it took me so long wasn't just that I didn't have a whole lot of time, but that it, from a very deeply authentic place inside of me, I wanted to layer these themes in this novel of everything that means the most to me. And I was able to do that through Victoria Nash. And I love her so much for allowing me to do that. I don't want to give away any spoilers, like I said, but so I won't go too much more into what the novel is about. But one of my all-time favorite reviews of this novel is that it said, I think it was in the Denver Post, it said it reads like a love song to Colorado. I was like, oh, thank you. I just thought that was one of the most lovely things that anyone could say to me, a fifth-generation Coloradan who just absolutely had to tell this story. So I will tell you that no one is more shocked than I am at the success that this book has had. So I wrote it in this very private, very quiet way. Like I said, I wrote a lot of it out in the wilderness in the exact settings that you're reading. And I didn't even tell a lot of people that I know that I was writing a book until years into the writing. And now, this book is being translated into 34 languages, like Heidi said. It's being sold in 45 countries. It's like, also she said that it's being made into a movie, which we can talk about if you want to. I've been on book tour pretty much solidly for the past 2 years in a dozen states and 11 countries. It's being published all over throughout Europe, but also in South Korea and China and Japan and Russia and I don't even know, and Azerbaijan. That's true. Bulgaria. And it is on bestseller lists in many of those countries. I got to go to Amsterdam this summer for the third time. It's been on their bestseller list for a year, and their top 20 bestseller list for a year and 3 months solid, right? I know. Thank you. Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I only tell you that because what I really want to say about that is, what? That's what I really want to say about that. But I've spent a lot of time wondering why. Like, why is this book resonating cross-culturally? Why is it resonating so deeply in people's hearts? Why, when I've done over 200 in-person book events and countless number of book events online. I don't even know at this point. I've had so much fun. It's been such a joy and an honor to get to talk to readers about this book. And no matter where I am in the world, people come up to me and they put their hand on their heart and they're like, oh, your book. And I got my story that I worked so hard on has gotten into people's hearts. And you have to know that that is the greatest thing that you could ever, for me as a writer, that's my absolute biggest dream. I hope people are walking away from this novel feeling more compassion and empathy for how difficult it is to be a human being. I hope people are walking away from this novel knowing that we all carry grief, we all carry loss, we all are up against something, some challenge, some difficulty, and why can we not all just be kinder to one another around that? I hope, oh, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that. Hallelujah, right? Yeah, and also the power of the natural world in our lives to be instructive and empowering and challenging. That is very important to me, and that we take care of it. And just that we all know that Every single one of us, every single person in this room is exactly like Victoria Nash, who is stronger and more resilient than she ever knew she was until she had to bear the seemingly unbearable. We all carry that strength inside of us, especially the women, I'm just saying. And, and I want to just, if the book is a reminder to anybody about how strong we truly are and can be, and how compassionate and kind we truly are and can be, then that is the only success that I actually need for this book. So thank you all so much, and I would love to take your questions. So thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I really, ask me anything about the process or about the novel, whatever you want. Heidi has a microphone, so she'll come around, and I'll make sure that everybody hears all the questions as well. Yeah. Yes. Oh, okay. I love that question because I have a little quick story about that. Someone asked that in the morning session as well. I always knew exactly where I wanted to end this book. And again, with no spoilers, I'll say that what I felt as a writer is that I had given you enough information about all of these characters and what they're capable of. To where I ended the book, I thought that you could kind of take it from there and decide what kind of a life were these characters going to have afterwards. I wanted to end it there, but on one of my very first book events, I was so surprised when somebody said, well, you clearly ended it on a cliffhanger. Clearly there's going to be a sequel. And I was like, did I? I had no idea until somebody pointed that out to me because I never thought of it as such. I really never thought of it as such. I thought I didn't want to wrap it all up too tidy, but I wanted to end there. And so no, my quick answer is no. I had never even considered a sequel until people started asking me about that. But I will also tell you, though, that because people have suggested that, and I'm honored and grateful that people have suggested that, the only thing that's a little bit in my mind, and who knows if I ever will do this, but I don't know, I'm a little drawn to going back and telling Ruby Alice's backstory, right? Right? I feel very compelled to know more about her, and I think there's a whole untapped story there, right? I don't think it would be Wilson Moon. I can talk a little bit more about him if you'd like, if you ask a question about him. I never felt that Wilson Moon's story was my story to tell. Wilson Moon has a whole backstory, but as an indigenous character, as an indigenous young man who has a cultural background and a history that is unfathomable to me, truly, in a real way, I wanted to do the most respectful thing with that character and only see him through Victoria's lens and not to make any assumptions about the fact that I could own in any way his story enough to tell that fully. And so I wouldn't be telling his backstory, although I do have a sense in my mind of what it is. But anyway, who knows? Maybe someday you'll hear more about Ruby Alice. Thank you for that. Yeah.
I have two little things. One, this guy loves your book.
Yay, thank you. I'm so glad. I love it. I love you. Thank you so much. Men in the audience, every man I know who has read the book loves the book, and I appreciate that so much. More men need to read it, I think. So thank you. That's lovely.
I hadn't finished the first page.
The first page.
Before I said, and it was an audiobook, so I was listening.
Yeah?
And it said, Lisa, the language of this is so
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
which is so authentic,
Oh,
true.
I'll tell you what he's saying. You're amazing. Thank you. He said the language is so beautiful. The language was so authentic. What's your name? Jay. I cannot tell you what that means to me, because that authenticity, where that literally I poured my heart and soul into this book, everyone. I absolutely did. And the beauty of it, to try to reflect the beauty of the Colorado landscape that I love so much and means so much to me in the language of the novel, was very intentional on my part. I worked and reworked those sentences over and over again to say exactly what I wanted to say in the way that I wanted to say it, but always with an ear toward the poetry of the book. And I worked really hard on that. And so for you to see that and love that, it means the world to me. So thank you. That is lovely. Thank you so much.
Third time.
You're reading it for the third time? That's incredible. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, give it to all your guy buddies, because I would love more men to read the book, and especially, you know, it really is about the power of the river and the natural landscape, but especially the power of the river. And, you know, living in the Gunnison Valley, and my son is an avid fly fisherman, and he's taught my husband, and always we as a family have just spent so much time sitting next to the wild rivers of the Gunnison Valley. I have been on a quest my entire life to try to know what the mountains know, to try to know what the rivers know. There is so much wisdom there and so much humility, so much to learn. And one of the things that the rivers have taught me, and this is the central metaphor of the book, it's where the title comes from, is the idea that rivers, sacred as they are, they always find a way to move forward. I find so much encouragement and wisdom in the idea that they will carve new banks when necessary, go up and around obstacle. They will move forward no matter the obstacle. And for me, that is a powerful metaphor for life and an encouragement that we all can do the same. And it certainly informs Victoria Nash's journey. And I feel that that's a theme and a metaphor and very rooted in the natural world that anybody could get behind. So thank you, Jay. Super kind of you.
And the congeniality of solitude.
Solitude, I agree. So I go camping by myself. That's what I'm saying.
But you're never alone.
The congeniality of solitude. Jay might have given me the new title of my next book. That's beautifully phrased. You obviously love language as well.
Are you going to insist that it's filmed in Colorado?
Well, okay, so let's talk about the movie. Yeah, let's talk about just briefly about the film. So the film is, hi. Hi, do you have a question? Yeah. Okay, good. Oh, okay. Sure, yeah. Could you just pause on that for just a second? Yeah, I'll come back to the movie in just a second. What's your question? That's fine.
I'm a writer too, and I spent 10 years on my house. So
Wonderful.
I truly
You get it.
what you went through, but I want to know, because I went to all these conferences, there's plotters and pansters.
Yeah.
So did you know at the
Yes.
beginning where Victoria was going, or did it evolve?
Okay, thank you for that question. Then I'll pop back to the movie. The plotter or pantser story. It's kind of like when someone said, you know, cliffhanger, and I was like, what? I was doing a podcast interview and someone said, are you a plotter or a pantser? Just throwing out those terms like everybody uses them. And I was like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. I was like, I have no idea what that means. And they said, do you plot everything out or do you fly by the seat of your pants? Apparently that's what that means. Are you a plotter or a pantser? So because that was the first time I'd ever heard that exact phrasing, I had to think about that for a minute. And my answer was, I am neither. I am a marinator. I'm a percolator. I'm a percolator. And that was my answer, and I'm sticking to it, because the story, again, this is my only novel. I am working on a second book, which we can talk about, but I had never written a novel before. In my life as a creative writer, it was always short fiction and poetry. I had no idea how to write a novel until I wrote one. This was a learning experience of my life. And what I found about myself is I let my characters and my plot and everything about it just kind of marinate inside of me until it comes out in that most organic, most authentic way. And I will tell you that I got then so deeply invested in Victoria Nash that there were many times, and maybe you've felt this before, where she was writing this book. You know, where I literally was like, oh, Victoria, this is me typing. I didn't know you were going to do that, right? And that's the best feeling as an author, because suddenly you're so in your groove that something deeply authentic to the story itself takes over, and you're no longer kind of manipulating it as like the puppet master. You actually are just going along for the ride. And that happened to me several times with Victoria's character. So my answer to you is I'm a marinator. How's that? Okay, that's good. So the question was, will I have the insist on the movie being filmed in Colorado? If I have anything to say about it, absolutely, yes. And I think that I will. So I'm sure a lot of you have favorite books that you love that were turned into movies that you hate. Is that a good way to phrase it? Or that you love less, shall we just say it that way? So of course I'm worried, well, not worried. Of course that's in the back of my mind on some level of this novel that really means so much to me, and I understand means so much to so many readers. Do I trust filmmakers to make this beautiful cinematic film that is true to Victoria Nash's character and also true just sort of to the spirit of the novel? And I will tell you that my filmmakers who I have a contract with, all they do is books to film. And all they do are books to film with books that they really love. And they, like you and like me, are book people. The production company is owned by Mitchell Kaplan, who maybe some of you know. He owns Books and Books in Miami, Florida, a classic independent bookshop. He is an icon in the book world, the independent book world. He was the president of the American Booksellers Association for years, and hands down, one of the kindest, most gentle, lovely human beings I have ever known. Because I assure you, I could get completely steamrolled in Hollywood. Me, I'm like, I don't know, can I go in the woods and just sit under a tree? I wouldn't trust it in anybody else's hands, but Mitch and his partner, Paula Mazur, I trust them. And I think they're going to make a beautiful film. What I can tell you is I've been told, again, I'm 57 years old last year. I was starting an entirely second act, right? I'd been a teacher all those years. I knew nothing about the publishing world. I know nothing about the film industry. I'm learning every step of the way. What they've told me is to tell you all that the film is in development. That's the words. That's the phrasing I'm supposed to use, in development. And what I'm learning that means is that they're really, really slow figuring out how it's all going to work. But the big strikes in Hollywood last summer of 2023, slowed everything down and complicated everything. So I believe the film will be made. I think it'll be beautiful. I will absolutely insist on it being in Colorado. But what I've been told is Montana and British Columbia have higher tax breaks for the film industry, but that Colorado is working on that. And so by the time my film is hopefully made, I'm already seeing more films made on the Western Slope. We come across them every once in a while. So I think that's already having an effect. And so I will absolutely insist that it's such a Colorado story. And I'm such a Colorado gal, and you guys are all Colorado readers. And I think we owe it to the story to set it in Colorado. So I will absolutely fight for that. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I don't know who has the microphone. Oh, okay, it's over there. Yeah, hi. Yeah.
My big question was, do you have a vision? We have such a diverse history of Native people in Harvard. Do you have a vision of where you don't want to
Yeah. Right. Well, I tried to leave that very vague, even like which tribal nation he had come from. So let me just briefly say about Wilson Moon. Hands down, the hardest part of this book for me to write was the character of Wilson Moon. But I will tell you, those of you who have not read it, it's a young indigenous character that you actually meet on the very first line of the book. And I knew that I could absolutely not tell a story about displacement in the American West and not include the indigenous experience on some level to the degree that I was able. So that for me manifested in this lovely, lovely young man named Wilson Moon, who Victoria Nash meets on the first pages of the book. They're both roughly 17 years old at the time. It's 1948 in Iola, Colorado on the Western Slope. And I wanted to pour into Wilson Moon a lot of my contemplations around displacement, a lot of contemplations around generational displacement and what does that do to someone's soul. So Victoria is deeply rooted to the land in Iola in a similar way that I feel that I'm deeply rooted to my land and my landscape. Wilson Moon is the product of generational displacement. Displacement historically of his ancestors and also displacement for himself, one of the children that was stolen from the reservations and put in those horrific, quote unquote, Indian boarding schools that were really just terrifying indoctrination institutions that went on far too long in our history. And I wanted to ask the question, what happens to a sense of place in someone who has that kind of trauma in their background? I also wanted to ask the question of where does vitriolic prejudice and racism come from? Some of the characters in the novel hate Wilson Moon simply because he's indigenous. What Victoria Nash sees instead, the minute she meets Wilson Moon, is a beautiful, lovely human being. And so we both have the ability to be completely transcendent of cultural bias and inherited racism in the novel through the love story of Wilson Moon and Victoria Nash. And we also have the legacy of that bias and that deep prejudice in our culture with the horrific racism toward Wilson Wilson Moon in the story. I felt it was super important to be really honest and tell both of those stories. Yeah, so I see Wilson Moon only through Victoria's lens, and she's very shy and quiet, he's very shy and quiet. There's not a lot of talking between them, and so I leave a lot of his story untold. And I did that very purposely. So we don't really know exactly where he comes from or what tribe. I leave his background mysterious purposefully, and I love Wilson Moon. Oh, I love him so much. He is another one of those characters that just lives inside of me. And I hope that all of you were able to connect with him in that way as well. So thank you for that question. I really appreciate getting to talk about him. Yeah. Yay, yay!
I really want to talk about peaches.
Okay, let's talk about peaches. Totally.
On the cover, a huge part of the book.
Yes.
And you clearly know really a lot.
Well, I do now.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Learn all of that. Why? I mean, as being in Colorado, we understand.
Yeah.
How important peaches are.
Yes.
It's kind of a big part of Colorado.
Yes,
People
thank you
outside
for that.
Colorado don't
They
know
don't know anything. I know. It's
It's
crazy.
even on the cover.
Yeah, it's even on the cover. I love that question. Thank you, because it would have been really bad for me to not talk about the peaches. First of all, as I write a book called Go as a River, I certainly expected my publishers to choose a river for the cover. The first time I truly knew the impact that the peaches were having in this book was when my New York City publisher sent me this cover, and there was a big fat peach on the front. And I was like, wow, no. It was just a really profound moment for me, because I know they play a large role in the book, but for them to think that that was actually one of the most important things about this book, and something is for people who do not live inside Colorado, that was the thing that really jumped out at them. I will, as a little side note, I will say that you don't really have a whole lot of say about the cover of your book as an author. I love this cover. It's great. It really is. I love this cover, and gratefully so, because what I've learned in this, major learning curve that I have as a new author is really what they say is, hey, do you love this cover? And if you say no, they're like, well, you're wrong. That's true. That's really true. But gratefully, I did love this cover, and the peaches, the symbolism of the peaches, the idea of growing against the odds, because it is certainly growing against the odds to even be able to grow peaches in Colorado. The idea of resilience in new soil, all of those symbols for the peaches and how they resonate with Victoria Nash's story became very, very important. I only knew about peaches was that they were very, very special. And I live in Crested Butte. Just up and over Kebler Pass from us is Paonia. And the North Fork River Valley is one of my absolute favorite places in the world. I love the town of Paonia. It's our little banana belt. We're far too high at 9,000 and 10,000 feet in Crested Butte to grow much. I grow kale. But anyway, to grow much. And so those lovely farmers in Paonia every summer load up their fruits and vegetables and come up and over Kebler Pass for our farmers market every Sunday. And I've always known what exquisite peaches they grow there, and obviously in Palisade in the Grand Valley as well. And there's such a deep Colorado jewel that I wanted them to be in the novel. I also really, really needed to give the Victoria something to save, right? Something to focus on, something to love, and I needed the very ragged Nash family to have something beautiful that holds them together. And the peaches were it for me. I didn't know enough about peaches. In my first sketches of this novel, I wrote really dumb things, like really, really wrong things. So I went and I interviewed the peach farmers, and all of my research around peach growing in the novel was firsthand from the generational peach farmers in the North Fork Valley and the Grand Valley, Paonia, Hotchkiss, Palisade, Grand Junction, that area, sitting down and talking with those generational peach farmers. I cannot tell you what a joy it was, and how much I learned, and how much I had wrong when I was merely just doing research on the internet. Like literally after I talked to Lee Bradley at Orchard Valley Farms in Paonia, I still have it on my phone. I walked away talking into my phone going, okay, you have that all wrong. You need to go back and change all of that. And I still thank Lee every time I pop over there to pick peaches because he really saved me from being like major errors in my book as I was trying to incorporate this generational peach farm of the Nash family. So I think that's all I want to say about the peaches. This is the last thing I want to say about the peaches. Thank you for asking the question and saying, well, yeah, we all know about the peaches. Because like I said, I've been all over the country, all over in multiple different countries with this book. And when I am not in Colorado, I can guarantee you the first question I'm going to get from an audience like this is someone with like their hand on their hip and a little skeptical going, do you really grow peaches in Colorado? I cannot tell you the number of times I have gotten some a person who's so convinced they caught me in a lie. And the first time that ever happened, I was flabbergasted. I had no idea that the whole world didn't know we grow the best peaches in the world in Colorado. But we do, and they are gems, and it was an honor for me to get to honor them in my book. Yeah, so thank you for that question. Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, that's good. Yes?
I wanted to say how much I enjoy the sense of place.
Thank you.
About the book. And I was wondering what kind of feedback or reception has the book had in the Gunnison Valley?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. You have to know, being so rooted in the valley myself, these are my community members, these are my neighbors. I know people who were displaced from Iola. Friends of mine live in houses in Gunnison that were moved from the Iola. I was a little bit worried about it because, again, as a new novelist, I had the great challenge of walking this very fine line of telling a fully fictional story with fictional characters, fictional plot line, but rooted in a very real time and place and circumstance in the world and actually in my own valley, right? So I obviously did a lot of research around the building of Blue Mesa Reservoir. I wanted to make sure I got all of that right. Having lived in the valley so long, I knew all those stories. My friends are the local historians, and I have family that saw exactly what went on. They witnessed firsthand the damming of the wild Gunnison River and the rising of the waters. That happened in 1965, which was the year that I was born. So, and then the waters rose. That's when the dam was finished, and then the waters rose throughout 1965 and 66, where Blue Mesa was fully completed by 67. And I have plenty of family that knew the Iola Valley very well, and plenty of neighbors and community members who remember the Iola Valley when it was still a wild valley with a wild river down the center of it. So how are they going to feel about me telling this story? And I've got nothing but tremendous, remarkable, amazing support and love in the Gunnison Valley, and especially people saying, thank you for putting Iola back on the map. Because along with this, the pain of displacement, I would say for the people of Iola is the pain of erasure. Iola was so erased from the map that there are plenty of people that live in the Gunnison Valley who have no idea that there are towns at the bottom of Blue Mesa. And so here I am actually out all over the world resurrecting the town of Iola that had previously been erased from the map. And I've actually gotten nothing but thanks and gratitude and support. So I know, I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. And I'll say one thing. I did a wonderful event in Salida, another town that I love. I know. Are you from Salida? Yay! That's incredible. You came from Salida. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I did a wonderful event there, and a beautiful family, a whole family showed up and took up the whole front row of the event. And they were there specifically because they're an indigenous family, and their indigenous uncle was a young man in Iola, Colorado in 1948. What was it like for a young man to face whatever opinions and ideas about difference and about otherness and about diversity at that time? And they said that there was so much of Wilson Moon, of their uncle in Wilson Moon, and they thanked me for including that story. And you have to know that that was one of the things I was most nervous about, and it was so amazingly beautiful to get that love from that family. So that will forever live in my memory as one of the best things. So Heidi is waving at me that we don't want to go too long. I want to tell you all thank you. A million times over, thank you for reading my book, for loving my book, for for coming here today and asking your beautiful questions and for listening to my story. I love and honor you all, and thank you. And I'm so happy to meet you personally and sign your books over here. So thank you all so much.